where the water's very still, it's cold, just a deep hole in the stream bed. And anyway, some of those carcasses will go down into that gilai. And during the winter, they decompose very slowly. In the spring, the hatchlings, the small salmon. My cousin Herb Morrison and I went to the head of the bay there in Heidelberg in the spring to go to spear steelhead. And as we were walking along the sand beach of this small stream, I accidentally just kicked the sand, and my cousin Herb said, "Look at that." So I looked back, and here it looked like cellophane or saran wrap, real thin membrane, was a bag filled with thousands of little salmon. There was almost like a buzzing. They all had a yolk sac on them, but they're inside of this membrane. And so we just covered it over. And I was told that if we had taken one and swallowed it, we would have become wealthy people. But because we didn't bother the salmon, when things go bad, we're going to be lucky. And so that's kind of how it's been. But anyway, when they finally get out of that, they come out of the sand and they start moving downstream, and they have that yolk sac just attached below their gills, and that's what they feed from the leftover from that egg. And when they run out of nutrients or food, they'll drop down into that gilai, where these nutrients are down there from the decomposed bodies of the ones who spawned in the previous fall. And this is called a place of sustenance. And that's where a woman's feelings are. It's down there in that gilai, that place of sustenance. If a man knows that, he knows how to bring those feelings up to the surface to where two can become one, can become more. But our women aren't that generous with us. They say they're down in that place of sustenance, while the men are like a feather on the water. It just blows us around. We're flighty. So there's a whole lot of little things like that they talk about. Things that, and also that gilai. Say an uncle or a woman will say who walked in the ranks of chiefs, somebody very important to the survival of the community, went to the village back there, went home. And they wanted that person back as soon as possible. In the spring, just as the hatchlings were coming out of the ground, those small salmon, people would go up and they'd get on the north side of the stream by gilai. The north is the side of healing, and the color is black. So black is the comfort of darkness. It's sort of like you've gone back into the womb. This is where the things that can hurt you can't see you in this place. And so when they would do this, they would set up, and there were songs that were sung. I don't remember the names of them. I wrote some of these things down, and the bad thing about it is every time I start writing things down, I start forgetting it. But anyway, they would,
Don't convince yourself anymore.
No, I'm just trying not to let myself believe that.
Stop it.
Oh, stop it. Stop forgetting.
Stop convincing.
And you say that in Haida.
What's
Stop
that?
it.
Stop. Clan.
Plan?
Yeah. Stop.
Climb.
Clan, yeah. And, but anyway, they would sing these things, and then if it's a man that they need his spirit to come back, they would take his not Yaku, his true nephew, the one that sat back to back with him. What that means is this is the one that's going to inherit. And when they're traveling in a canoe, not Yaku, that true nephew would sit back to back with his uncle. And as they're traveling, this nephew will tell him what's coming from behind. he'll also describe land features as to how it looks looking the other way. So when they turn around and they're going back, the uncle always knows where they are. But he has to be able to trust that nephew that he's going to be accurate in what he's describing, and also if there's a threat. So this not Yaku, that nephew, would dress in the likeness of his uncle that went home. And he would go down to that gilai, and the drum would start as he was walking down or getting down the rocks to get there. And just as the sun is coming down, just before it came all the way down, it says that a window opens to the other side, and that drum is starting to call those spirits to come here to listen to this message. And as long as the drum is going to keep hitting, that window is going to stay open. So it'll go on all night, and he'll sit there and he'll talk to these small minnows about his uncle. Tell him how this person has a soft mind. This person is very knowledgeable, and all the good things about this uncle, and we need him to come back as soon as possible. So when you go out there, you take a message to those others out there and ask them to send our uncle back as soon as possible. And so this would go on all night, and just at Sandlanai, the drum would stop, the window would close, and the light would come back. A year after that ceremony, the first person born after that was said to have the spirit of that one that departed. Doesn't matter if it was boy or girl, it's the spirit in that person. And if it was a woman, then the niece. The niece is what, or we might say the oldest daughter, would be the one that would go and talk to those salmon. Because salmon were considered very powerful people who made, mysterious people who made long journeys. And they gained great knowledge on these long journeys. That's why our villages were never built by flowing streams. They were always built where there was water coming up from underground. There were springs. Because we didn't want to be living by where the salmon have spawned. We don't want to disturb them and to upset them. So the only time we go there is when we're going to go get food, during the fishing time. But then after a certain, I forget the name of this koho. My dad's brother, Claude Morrison, took me with him. I think it was in January. We went up by what's now the dam. It was really more of like a beaver pond, and there was ice on it, and it was real clear ice. And instead of, he had a hook, but he had on the other side was like a big spike. And I was wondering what was that for. And I started to ask him, and I thought, no, don't ask, just pay attention. So when we got there, it's about 2 miles, I guess we had to walk. We went out on that ice, and you had to walk real to kind of slide your feet because it's slippery. And under the ice, you could see this salmon moving very slowly. This coho in January, February. And so he took that spike and he used it for punching a hole in the ice. And that salmon didn't even move, didn't leave there, it just stayed there, his tail moving very slowly. Then he hooked it out. And it smelled almost like Clorox. The skin was purple. And so when he took it out, he dressed it out, and he told me he had to soak it overnight. I don't remember if he said it was in salt water or fresh water, but he had to soak it because to soak out that smell like Clorox. So that was the only time during the winter that they would go up there around the salmon stream. And they didn't go back until the springtime when the steelheads were coming in, and we'd spear them. So that's why we didn't build. Heidelberg is the only community that's built by a flowing stream, but that wasn't our choice. The missionaries picked that place, and that used to be a major fish camp for pink salmon, for humpies. It's the largest producer of pink salmon on Prince of Wales Island. So that's where we would get that first run of humpies and dry them. And they had racks out on the beach there by the smokehouses. And all of us kids, our job was to keep the seagulls and the crows away. So we'd be playing around here, throwing rocks at them and chasing them away. And we had a great time. So salmon are more than just fish. It's, there's this relationship we've had with them for thousands of years. So when we talk about environment, we're not talking about ourselves. I mean, we're talking about ourselves because we're part of it. It's not, we're not stewards. Steward means that you don't have any personal relationship. It's simply a resource you've got to take care of because you're going to get some money off it. But no, we have to protect them. And so there were ceremonies for, in the spring, the one ceremony that went on at, well, today it's called Cape Lookout. Thousands of Haidas would go up there and gather in the spring. And the men would go out in this hunting small canoe. Some of them, they had a fishing canoe too. They had a platform on the bow, but that's more for going in the river and spearing. But they would troll from soon as the sky got light to where you could make out things in the dark. They would leave the beach and they would go out and they would troll until just as the sun is sitting on the horizon going down. Then they would stop and they would go ashore and they would take all the ta'am, we call king salmon. Here in Canada I call them spring salmon. But they would lay them out on the beach. There were songs greeting them, speeches as they brought them ashore. There were highly honored guests that were brought ashore. And they were being thanked for presenting yourselves to us. And then during the night, they had big pits dug where they put the fish in there, and where there was hot rocks, and they put in layers. And then there was posts in the ground they covered over with sand. And then they take the post out and pour water down in that hole, seawater, onto those hot rocks. And that's how they would steam them. And this took all night. Then in the morning, at first light, they'd start opening up these pits. And there were songs that went with it, feast songs and whatever. And then everybody would eat. But what they did was, when fish is steamed like that, you can take the flesh and just peel it off, and the backbone stays intact, attached to the head and the tail. But then the fins, you had to take them off and put them on there. And then they would carry them gently down and put them in the ocean for more to come. And it said the spirit of those salmon would go out and tell the other ones how good these humans treat us, and to come and present themselves to us. And then once you did that, you could fish all year. So the ones who were responsible for keeping that history, not just the myths, but the actual history, was called Watskwa Haguyan Kwangan Gin Hedini Ik How Gigini. That one always remembers everything that happened way over there. In other words, you had to know that history back to the beginning. And the only ones that became those were trained from early childhood, and it was done in sessions, almost like hypnosis. Hawit guna or Pasquishka guna outlaw. Sit down, I'm going to show you something. Don't prepare yourself. So sit like this, put your head down, and then imagine that you have a container of water that's all silty. And you sit there and look at it and watch it settle. And when it's all, the water's clear, your mind is clear. I'm prepared. And then that person would start talking. And I always had the impression that I was going down inside that person and I experienced everything they would tell me. So it wasn't memorizing words, it was experiencing that thing. So when I tell it as having experienced it. So anyway,
Shall we take a break?
that's it.
That's it.
That's all, folks.